There's been a lot of talk today about capital, and I think the big question on everyone's mind is, are banks lending? Is there financing out there?
Yes, as you also heard, you saw three banks on the podium, which they are all lending, including DVB Bank. There are several banks. We consider today to be 6-7 banks active in the market on new deals. And as you know, syndicated loans are not in anymore. So we do club deals and we do bilateral deals. And you can easily, we see, especially in the energy sector, you can easily put together quite a lot of money these days, both for LNG, for offshore and so on. But also for normal shipping deals, you can do Nordea, ABN AMRO, DVB, and there are a few banks active. But the issue is that some banks have limited who do they deal with. They deal with special customers they have for a long time. Very few banks do new customers these days, and that's probably only the 3 or 4 of us doing that at the moment.
On what terms are these deals being done?
You can imagine prices for ships today are much lower. The advance ratio is lower, so we feel very safe when we do a deal today. You need less capital against the loans today when you finance at today's level. The gross margins are much higher, but our net margin is not so much higher than it was 4 years ago. So we lend at the same terms in net margin, but our liquidity costs have gone up, so the gross margin is very much higher. But the net margin we have taken all the time is basically what we still keep.
There was quite a stir, I believe it was last week, when we heard the banks were willing to repossess assets if necessary. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Now, that was me again. I said something about that. I said if you cannot find a proper solution with your customer, I said instead of doing a fight to juridical means, so using a lot of lawyers, I say give me the keys and then we can be friends. There's no need to make a protracted series of problems for each other. And the issue is, of course, that we then will go another place with the ship and try to employ it more profitable. And it can also be that the customer has behaved wrongly in our view, so we don't want to cooperate with him in the future.
So in this market, you'd be willing to manage the asset?
No, we don't manage physically our own, but we will take it over, and we will normally either find a co-investor or an operator who can help us out in the problem. So it can be a commercial manager, or it can be a technical manager.
There's no such thing as a typical deal, but let's say, for the sake of argument, typically, what would the exit strategy be once you've repossessed a vessel, secured management for it? How would you exit that investment?
The typical thing is that the owner has run out of money, and it might very well be that the ship is arrested. What we'll do is to clean the ship through an auction. A good example are 2 Samho ships, which are very specific, and you can see the typical way of doing it. We had our own people going up in the rivers in China to find the ship, clean it for the local claims, bring it down with some help of a manager down to Hong Kong, auction it off, and then we take it over and now we trade them. Our idea is, first of all, you get liquidity by trading them, and within a year or 2, we expect to reduce our exposure or sell it off, or both. So we are marginally underwater, let's say $1.5 or $2 million, and we expect to get that back within 2 years.
What are your thoughts on the Sanko restructuring and the impact on the market?
Well, you saw Korea Line, which was dramatic for the dry cargo market. I look at Sanko restructuring a bit in the same way. It's a dramatic that such a big company with so many charter-in ships gets into problems and do restructuring. Very serious. And it has an influence for the confidence in the market, and it will definitely have a consequence for the second-hand values for a while.
Tell us something positive that you can see on the horizon.
Now, the traditional positive thing I can say is that I get us, we have 60% of our exposure in the bank in shipping, and everybody says this must be very dangerous, and how can it be like that it is like this? I say then that half of our portfolio is doing just beautifully. We are in offshore, we are in LPG, LNG, we are very much in container boxes, which are doing fine in spite of the container industry. And we are in many areas, cruise industry for instance, ferries, everything is going very well. For us, the whole idea is to spread our risks, and but you can also see that the product tankers have probably seen the bottom. We are pretty close to the same for chemical carriers, and so on and so on. There are many positives, but something was said in here which is interesting. You cannot expect to go back to the 07, 08 levels of earnings. You will look at the long-term averages, and you will probably be back there within 2 years. But the negative all hanging is the supply side, which was stressed today.